you so much for joining us to speak about your heart failure condition. I'm Megan Murphy, the marketing coordinator at Health Monitor Network, and it's super nice to meet you and finally get to chat.
So nice to meet you, Megan and Joanna. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Elise. I'm Joanna, senior editor at Health Monitor. It's really nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Would you mind telling us just a little bit about your background?
Sure. I live in Midway, Utah, and I'm married with two grown daughters. One just got married, one is in college. And I'm a yoga therapist and I teach roller fitness, which is a fitness class on roller skates. And I've been teaching yoga and different fitness classes for over 20 years. And it was a passion of mine. And I'm very fortunate that those are two things that I still can do considering my condition. I haven't had to give a lot of things up. But I love it here. I love the Four Seasons. I love living in Utah. I love being active, and I'm kind of a semi-retired river guide and just have always been really active, and I just do things differently. So
yeah, I love that. I love that you talk about your active lifestyle. I love Utah. So yeah, like as a very active, person, tell me more about your diagnosis journey. Like what led you to being officially diagnosed with heart failure?
I was actually at an OB appointment years ago. It was around 2008, I believe. And my blood pressure was extremely high. They didn't know why. And so they sent me to another doctor. And he said, I hear something. I'm just not sure what it is. I'm not a specialist. So I'm going to send you to a heart specialist. And that's where they found, after testing, that I had ASD, or atrial septal defect, which is a separation in your septum wall. And they feel that it was it was something I'm born with. It's a congenital heart defect, but they thought that it wasn't until then that maybe it just started to give out. And what happens is the blood intermixes between the chambers without being filtered in your lungs first and then going to your brain. So it's basically, it can cause a lot of strokes. And so ironically, the high blood pressure had nothing to do with it. I think that was just a really fluky caveat that got me to get checked.
Wow, no, that's kind of like something like everything happens for a reason. So I'm glad you went to that chat. Can you tell me a little bit about the emotions that you felt when you first heard that you had this condition?
Yes. So when I had atrial defect, just to go back on that a little bit, I had a device put in that sealed the septum wall. And then whether it was an allergy or something, it just didn't work well in my body. And so 9 years later, I had to get it removed. So I underwent open heart surgery where they stopped my heart and they took the device out and rebuilt my septum wall and my chambers. And then I was really great. I actually backpacked over 120 miles with my young girls and my husband to Everest Base Camp because my heart was amazing. So I was doing all the things I love to do. And then 5 years later is when I was life-flighted diagnosed with actually stage D heart failure. And with that, the emotions that came was kind of resentment. I think you just want it's easy to place blame when there's no reason why, because there isn't a reason why. My heart was great, and I have been through all the tests, all the genetic testing. There's no actual pinpointed reason why my heart failed. The electrical system just shot, and my heart just decided it was done. So it was hard not to feel fear and not to feel anger. And like I said, resentment and finding something to blame. And that's a process that takes a lot of time to be okay with the fact that it's a lifelong process.
Yeah, that's really understandable. So how did you cope with that feeling?
Well, not very well at the beginning. I'll admit, I was really angry. I'm someone that wears her emotions on her sleeve anyway, but I tried to be strong about it. But I've learned I gave myself what I call a dark day. And luckily over the past 2 years, it's gone from once a week to maybe once a month, where I allow myself to cry, to be mad, to be angry, to be resentful, to feel all of those feelings so they don't take root. Because I say this a lot, where there's physical heartbreak and emotional heartbreak. And emotional heartbreak is a lot harder to heal. than
Mhm.
physical heartbreak. And so if you let things take roots, emotions specifically, they will take root and manifest into something much worse years later. And so I allowed myself to be upset and feel all of those feels. And at the end of the day, I could say, okay, I feel better. It's not going to change anything, but I allow myself to be sad. I just don't allow myself to stay there. And that's how I've been coping with it.
Right. And I know that you're extremely active on and open in social media about your healthcare journey. Is that something that's helped with like your stress? And yeah, tell us more about, why do you feel it's so important to share your story about heart failure?
I share it because I had a hard time finding a lot of support, especially with someone in my age category with the condition I have. So I started sharing about it in hopes that people would kind of find me in a way, if that makes sense. And then it turned into finding people. It was mainly people with children with severe heart defects, that I would much rather have it be me than a child. And so I just started implementing my education in yoga therapy as a way to help other people. And even my teaching roller skating and everything, to just say, look, you can still do the things you love to do. It just might look different. I can't spike my heart up. I'm very limited to fluid and the foods I eat and everything. And so sharing what I'm going through can help someone else realize, hopefully, that you don't have to stay in your sad. And you may not be able to do everything the same way you used to be able to do them, but you can do it differently and just keep a positive attitude. That's why I share it.
Yeah, no, I feel like being on social media and showing people, even with this condition, that you can still do everything that you are doing is really like inspirational. And it's also important to let people know to feel their feelings, and that's valid. But yeah, I think that's really awesome.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, what do you feel has been the most important or helpful thing while on your health journey?
The most important, besides the dark day, which I feel is the most important, is allowing yourself to be okay being mad. I think there's a misconception of my positivity and sharing positivity within hardship, that you should just be happy all the time. And it's nearly impossible to feel happy if you don't know the sad, if you don't feel that. And so you have to feel both. So I'm an advocate on allowing yourself being okay to feel angry and feeling sad. But I also have a regimen. It's called MAWDS, MAWDS, which is medication, activity, weight, diet, and symptoms. So that's basically what I do every day. That's my regimen every single day that helps me through this.
Yeah, that was, our next question is, like, how has your diagnosis impacted your day-to-day life? I know you mentioned you do mods. Yeah, so how is it different, from before you were diagnosed?
Well, I never weighed myself. Now I weigh myself once or twice a day. The reason for that is if you fluctuate over 2 or 3 pounds a day, and especially if it I shouldn't use the word fluctuate. If it doesn't go down and if it continues to go up, that could be a sign that leads to the symptoms. That could be a sign that your heart's working too hard, and so it's trying to push off the extra fluid, which is why I am limited to 1.5 liters of fluid a day and 1,000 milligrams of sodium, because sodium helps your body retain fluid. And when your heart has too much fluid, it works a lot harder and it starts to slough off into your body, and that's when you get swollen. And so it's really important to maintain your weight, to recognize your body will tell you when something's going on. It's actually pretty cool, So when I used to get frustrated because my legs are swollen all the time, now it's kind of like, hey, my body's telling me what's going on, and it's helping me to signal. And then with the activity, that's changed because, of course, with the limited fluid, I'm not pushing so hard, and my muscles actually don't get to the point of fatigue before my heart gets fatigued, if that makes sense. So I can't push as hard, but I'm at a stable place now to where I should be. And I have been pushing a little bit more, but my body again lets me know when, like, what my max is and what my limit is. And then with diet, like I said, learned some cheats, some ways. I don't even call it cheating. It's funny because I'm forced to eat the way we should be eating, and I would complain about it. Like, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that. And it's like, we shouldn't be eating what we eat all the time. So it's actually been a really positive thing to enjoy squeezing a lemon or lime over my salad instead of salad dressing. I actually prefer it. So I've been really surprised at the changes that I originally thought were a negative thing to becoming this awesome, positive, better option for me anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm sure that a lot of people you've spoken with have given you advice on like diet changes for your condition. But if that's what it is, can you share what the most helpful advice that you've gotten from your healthcare team has been?
Yes. And I was actually relieved to hear it when they would say, don't worry unless there's something to worry about. We're taking care of you. Live your life within reason. And I think they said that specifically because they knew me well enough to know that if they give me an inch, I'm going to take a mile. Like you say, I'm okay. I'm going to go with it. And I'm with a heart failure team. And one of the doctors specifically just said, it's focusing on the vocabulary that you say. So if someone asks how you're doing, it's not necessarily have to say I'm fine, because it's not fine. But I've learned to change my vocabulary. I choose to say it's not okay, but I'm stable. So if I tell myself, and that's just a personal thing, if I tell myself that I'm okay and that I'm fine mentally, I will think that's true, and I will push myself harder than I should. I will eat things I shouldn't. I'll get to a point where, oh, I forget that I have this, because it's not like I look or feel sick. I get pain quite often, and no one else would know what I'm feeling because I'm not bedridden. I don't look sick, but I have to be really careful and remind myself through my vocabulary that they taught me to just remind yourself, you're okay. I mean, it's stable, but it's never going to go away. But also, don't worry until there's something to worry about, and let's just stay positive and live your life. So they've been really
I really like that quote that your doctor said, to live your life within reason, right?
Yeah.
So how did your diagnosis affect your career as a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist?
Mainly by becoming my own client, if that makes sense. When I first had my open heart surgery and I was living in a recliner for nearly 3 months, to not get into too much detail, it was a very, very hard recovery, and just back and forth in the hospital. And I really do feel that if I had not known how to breathe in different spaces of my lungs, and to not know breathing patterns that help with depression, and controlling my central nervous system to calm me down and to minimize the production of cortisol, stress hormone, in my system, I knew all that beforehand as a yoga therapist. So becoming my own client and feeling it for myself and implementing it for myself 100% kept me from depression. Let me restate that. It did not keep me from depression. It kept me from staying in it. I'm not saying that I wasn't sad or I don't know what depression is. But implementing those techniques that I had been teaching other people with trauma, anxiety, stress, PTSD, all those things, I was now practicing myself. And so that's kind of been my motivation from here on out, is to share this specifically with the heart and lung community. I had part of my lung removed last year, that now I can implement my education in yoga therapy to helping people learn breathing techniques and learn how to self-soothe in the way that I had to myself.
Yeah, no, it really seems like you're the epitome of practice what you preach within your career. So I think that's awesome. So with your career, you go on a lot of retreats for your work through your company, Utah Yoga and Wellness. In fact, you just got back from one. Can you tell me how you prepare for these longer trips and how your health may impact you on these retreats?
Absolutely. I started creating retreats that I wanted to go to. So even before I was diagnosed with heart failure, I was doing retreats. And after the diagnosis, I kind of catered to for instance, one of my retreats I do is called a Hygge retreat, Hygge. It's the Danish word for contentment or coziness. My mom's Danish. And it's just a way, instead of keeping you in your heavy, or I've been to lots of retreats where there's lots of purging and getting down deep into things and releasing things. And I didn't want to do that. I've done that enough. And I'm not saying I don't have to anymore. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a time and a place. So I wanted to build a retreat that was focused on joy. That was, now how can yes, I'm in this mess. Yes, everyone has their hard. Everyone's going through something hard. But how can I create a retreat that teaches women what to implement in their home to make them feel wellness, to make them feel comfortable and cozy? What are some hobbies that they can learn and meditations to implement and all these things? So I started that, and then I just recently got back from my retreats that I do in Mexico every year with my co-partner, Dana Baptiste, and we did 3 back-to-back. And to answer your question more fully, I am eager, and my doctors are even excited that I go. They're happy that I go, because at sea level, my heart's amazing. It's amazing. Very different from living up in the mountains in Utah. So I can tell within about an hour of landing in Mexico that I could hike all day, and I just feel really, really good. And that's not to say that people that live in in low altitude don't have heart problems or heart pain, but me personally, because I live in high altitude, it makes a big difference. And so I actually really look forward to it, because I feel I feel healthy, and I have to be, because I'm, leading people on hikes, and it's an adventure retreat, and it's pretty amazing to feel a little stronger than I do back home.
Yeah, I
So I
love
won't
that
stop
you
doing those.
mentioned that yeah, I love that you mentioned that there's a time and place for everything, right? That you go to a retreat to focus on joy, because you mentioned earlier that you have dark days as well, right? That you allow yourself to feel all the feelings. So yeah, tell us more about how, mental strength is just as important as physical strength when dealing with your condition.
Well, I believe this because it's not only a scientific, it's out there scientifically, but also having felt this myself, that if you are unwell mentally and emotionally, it affects you physically. So you can actually create depression or stay in depression or be worse physically if your mind is in that place. And so again, careful how I say this, because it's not that you have to be happy all the time. That's impossible. But don't allow yourself to stay in your sad. And that's what I see a lot of is people, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And I can't. And I want to focus on, yes, you can. It just can look different. You may not be able to run, but you can walk faster up a small hill, or you may not be able to, whatever it was you were doing, especially people in the transplant world. Their lifestyles it's different for everyone, but their lifestyles can be very different. But focusing on what you can do rather than what you can't is a big deal. And learning how to combat depression and anxiety and even PTSD, because it's an ongoing condition. It's never going to be over. And there are going to be times that are really hard. It just ebbs and flows the whole rest of your life. So learning to have those self-soothing techniques mentally and emotionally can help your body to heal, because your body will pretty much do what you tell it to do. And if you stay in your sad, it affects your heart rate, it affects your blood pressure, it affects everything, it affects your digestive system. But if you find joy and you build hobbies and you're keeping your brain going, and you try and be as positive as you can and living a life as full as you can, your body will follow that. And all of those things that I mentioned will maybe not heal completely, but be a lot better than they were if you stay depressed.
You kind of just spoke on how you manage your stress and emotions, like kind of altering activities that are like in a way that works for you, even though you can't do things how they used to look. You kind of find a new way to do them based on like how you're feeling that day. So is that just basically how you manage your stress and emotions? And it's like a process to learn to get to that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, like I mentioned before, earlier in the conversation, a little bit about, I'm thankful that I can do yoga and roller skating, the two things that I love to do. I do them differently. I'm not doing a full hour power session anymore. I'm not pushing my speed on my skates anymore. I'm taking breaks, but even changing the way I teach, going online and doing videos, let's just say. No one knows that I pushed pause for a half an hour and rested and come back and continue. So I can do things that no one even knows, that that I don't want to use the word can't, but just doing things differently. So I've learned how to implement a new system into my life to keep me doing the things I love to do. And it's okay if it looks different. It wasn't for me at first. I had a really hard time with the I can't. And I had a really hard time with adjusting to knowing there's certain places I won't be able to go again, and certain things I won't be able to do, just talking altitude and effort. But the process of learning to do things differently has been really amazing, from the foods I eat to, which can be a whole different story because I eat more sugar because it doesn't have sodium in it. So I'm working on that. But, but just going about things differently has been really positive. And I will say that with this detriment in my life, that at one point was detriment, I've never felt happier. And I believe that forcing yourself, like something that happens to you in your life that forces you to live more mindfully, has made me happier. So doing things differently has been one of the greatest blessings in my life.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you've, found ways to implement, to learn like, oh, what works best for yourself, right? So, for someone who's just been recently diagnosed, who's still like in the process of like learning how to do things differently, like you mentioned, what advice would you give them?
Well, first I'd say welcome to the club. It's a club you don't want to be in, but it's a good club. It can be hard to, okay, and I'm just saying this from my perspective in the wellness world, that it can be hard for some people to listen to their doctors. It can be hard to hear, you need to take your meditation or medications. I actually say take your meditation as well with your medication. But my medications are keeping me alive. And I'm extremely grateful for their advice and for the medications I'm on, and for the 1.5-year process that it took to find the right cocktail to keep me at a stable place. And so I would advise to listen to your doctors, be open and honest with your doctors, tell them what you're feeling in your body, tell them emotionally how you're feeling. Because again, like the mental and emotional health that goes along with the physical, if you're not telling them that you're having certain feelings or certain thoughts, that's all part of the process that they can help you through. And practicing doing things differently, rather than taking it as a negative thing, it's a positive thing. It just takes a while to get there. And it can actually make you happier. I mentioned this before that, I can't have nachos anymore. But this recipe that I found for this, it sounds so funny because it's not cheese, but it's a vegan cheese. It's like a vegan sauce, just things like that, where it's so good that I think I would have never actually made that or had that had I not been forced to. Or I would have never tried this hobby or done this activity or changed my yoga practice or how I skate if I didn't have this cognitive focus on doing something different that opened up this whole new world to share with other people. So don't be down on yourself. Take this as an opportunity to live your life differently and to learn to be happier through something difficult.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And thank you for sharing that with anyone who's newly diagnosed. Thank you so much, Elise, for sharing your story. I think you're going to help and inspire so many people just by how you look at how you deal with your condition. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Elise. Like, this was really eye-opening, and I'm so glad that, you're here to talk about your story. It's really refreshing to hear it from someone who's actually been through it. You know, it's still different coming from a patient like you know, because you have been through it. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm
Well, if
happy
there's,
that we connected.
thank you. If there's something else I could mention that I just thought about, when you had asked about advice I would give someone, it just came to my mind something that I have been very mindful of is eliminating stress from your life. If that is little habits that you do every day or quite often that you don't realize how much stress that's putting on you, get rid of it. It's taken this illness of mine and changing the way I live to recognize even stressful situations or people that are in my life, that I no longer feel mean or bad closing doors on those situations or people or relationships that create worry or stress, you know, or that you're trying so hard to make something work or to get a result from a certain situation and it's just not happening. It's okay to get rid of it. And the more you can eliminate and just surround yourself with, whether it's the workplace or family, friends, whatever it is, just be really mindful of how and with whom you spend your time, because that does play a part in your mental and emotional health, which does really play a big part in how your heart and your body reacts.
Setting boundaries is important.
Boundaries. Yeah.
Love it.